I was in the city on 9/11, working in Soho, about 15 blocks from the towers. There are a few days in my life that I can remember almost every detail. I can remember everything that happened that day. I'll never forget, as Dr. Driscoll said, in New York in particular, the sky was just so crystal clear and blue. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. I remember everyone I was in the office with that day. As we watched from our conference room window the events unfold and the towers collapse. And like most people in the city that day, I was scared and just wanted to find my way home. Home for me is Middletown, New Jersey, a town of about 70,000 people, 45 miles south of Manhattan. Many people like myself commuted to New York by train, bus, or ferry. It was a long commute, but it was worth it to be so close to the beach. Eventually, I made it home safely to my wife and my 3 young boys. We had just celebrated the birth of my 3rd son, Zach, on August 28th. But 37 people from my town were not so fortunate that day and never made it home to their loved ones. It was simply devastating for a town like ours. In the days after the attacks, we began to hear about the people from our town who died that day. My wife learned about the losses of 2 of her friends suffered. Both women lost their husbands. My wife knew them both from a pregnancy class that they were in together. Christine Spencer gave birth to her son 2 weeks before our son was born. Pat Wooten's son was born 8 days after the attacks. So while I was happy to be safe and hugging and enjoying time with my family, Christine and Pat were in a state of shock. Christine held a combined memorial service and baptism that would be a celebration of life for her husband, Andrew, and her new baby boy, Robert. I'm not sure I attended anything as tough as that ceremony. It was simply heartbreaking. Every year at this time, I think about Christine and Pat, and I think about all the members of our town that suffered terrible losses that day. I find myself being sad at this time of year, but I also find myself reflecting positively on my own life and how amazing people can be. I try to reflect on what I've done in the past year for my family, my friends, and for others. 9/11 has changed me. It made me a better husband, a better father, and hopefully a better person. It allowed me to truly understand the importance of family time and being present. And it helped me to understand the importance of giving back. My family and I have been an active part of our community in Middletown and share a desire to help others. I think 9/11 had a similar impact on many others in my town and created a special bond for the residents of Middletown that we will always share. I was recently reminded of how great the human spirit can be when I saw the musical Come From Away in London this past spring. It's the story of how an entire town rallied to help feed and house the nearly 7,000 passengers that were stranded in Gander, Newfoundland when their planes were forced to land there on 9/11. For 5 days, this town of 10,000 people made it their top priority to welcome and care for these scared, stranded passengers. It's a heartwarming display of how caring people can be and how something so good can come from something so terrible. True story from that week in Gander. A couple met there that were stranded there that week and actually married a year later. I'll leave you with just a few final thoughts to think about this time of year. First, always remember the sacrifice of our first responders. They ran into the towers when myself and everyone else were fleeing the city. Next, love your family and friends every single day. Let go of the small things that get in the way of your relationships. And finally, reach out to those in need and give of yourself. It doesn't matter what it is, but make it count. It does make a difference. Thank you, and please never forget.